Hey there everyone, what's up? I am back today with another impressions video, and this one is a game that I actually finished about a month ago, and because there were so much stuff going on, I just never got a chance to actually talk about it. But the game I'm going to talk about today is Eirasha Deiko 3D, which is Take the A Train 3D for the 3DS. And if anybody's ever played an A Train game, which is possible, there are localized versions, but I mean, you're probably if you've played it, you're like an old school PC gamer essentially, because that's the only place it ever showed up. A Train is a series that's somewhat like SimCity, but it's based entirely on the trains. So you are essentially running a train company, but the company builds obviously train stations and train lines, but uh, by building the train stations and train lines, you build up the city. So when you put a station somewhere, usually shops will start growing around the station, and you can help that along by buying shops and buying apartment buildings and buying different industries. So you can start doing like logging and then build industrial railroad lines to ship your logs, or various other things like oil or mining or whatever. So you have a lot of options available for you to do the various scenarios of the game. So that's just like a basic overview of what it is, but it's actually quite in depth. So it's a pretty hardcore simulation game. It's not for the faint of heart. It's not for the people. It's not for people who are not going to be really into a kind of deep simulation, because this game is a deep simulation. For example, just to give you an example of the simulation part, it takes mm, about 10 hours to get through the tutorial. Um, so I think a lot of you, that might turn off a lot of people right away. The tutorial is optional. You don't have to do it, but if you've never played the series before, or you haven't played the series in a long time and you want to see what's new, you should do the tutorial, because it introduces somewhat, not slowly, but um, it rolls out kind of the options for things you can do in the game. So, it is a 10-hour tutorial, though. It did take me about 10 hours to finish the tutorial. And from there, you have a lot of scenarios. And the scenarios are usually based on either building a population to a certain amount using developing the train stations and the industry, or developing a certain industry to a certain level, or developing your income to a certain level. There's a lot of different kind of challenges for each scenario. So depending on what scenario you're doing, the way you play the game is somewhat different. Because some scenarios will have you like you have to raise the population, so you want to build like attractions for people to move there. Usually that means like building up residential areas and shopping centers and things like that, and entertainment districts, and connecting them with buses and trains and all types of other things that your company can use. Whereas there are more industry based maps where you have to um, take into account like how much money you're making from a certain industry and connect it to towns next door to it, so you can trade better or get more money from your more bang for your buck, I guess, for your chosen industry, whatever it may be. So A Train tends to be it's really dense, and I think like this is the kind of simulation game that I like. It's quite hard to get into. It's something you have to really pay attention to and be interested in, and it makes a good simulation, because if you're kind of interested in running a company like this with a not an unlimited amount of money, but a lot of money in the beginning to start with, and given the certain scenario to try to beat that scenario, I guess it's a pretty interesting game. Um, that's that really goes for most simulation games. Um, as I mentioned, I'm a big fan of this kind of business simulation type of game, and I have a pretty big collection of business simulation games from all the way back to the Famicom to present day. So I've got a lot of those. Um, but A Train tends. I should mention that this is probably like the. I think it's the 19th game in the series. It might be 18, but it's somewhere around there. And the series itself is pretty interesting because it's like a yearly series almost. But the first one I played, I believe, is A Train 3. Whatever it was, Maxis put it out in the U.S. On computers, on PC, and I played it that way. But after that, a lot of them weren't localized, so um, there are a bunch of different A Train games, and there's a ton on the PlayStation, and even on the PC Engine and Super Nintendo, and even uh, from there it just goes on. They're on every system, so PS2, and I'm not sure if there's a PS3 one, but I think from that point they moved to mostly PC development. But there is a DS one also, so there are a lot of A Train games, and they all tend to be pretty dense. The 3DS version though is uh, it's good, it's fun, and it's pretty difficult. But it, it's not a huge upgrade from the DS version. So there are, like, for example, you can actually like get a kind of camera train eye view, I guess, if is what you'd want to say, because you can kind of ride the train around the town, and you can also zoom down to like person level and in your town. Except when you do that, it's hideous. Everything looks like crazily zoomed in DS graphics. It doesn't look good at all. So, and I mean, I can understand that because it's not really like you're doing that normally in the simulation. When you play the game, you're usually zoomed way, way out. So that kind of option, I think it's nice to be there, I guess, but it's totally useless because it's so awful to look at when you go into it. Also, this game is Eirasha Deiko 3D, but I don't think I ever used the 3D in the game. It's totally useless, I think. It would be totally not worthwhile to use the 3D because mostly you're looking at text and icons to place small buildings and railroad tracks and things like that. The 3D part of it is totally unnecessary, which I'm not. I makes me wonder why they put it on the 3DS. If only because I guess it's more popular than any other option that they would have. But probably my guess is that it's kind of like a port up of the DS version more so than a newly created game, which it doesn't. That's not to say it looks bad. It doesn't look like a kind of stretched out DS game. It does look like they've made new stuff, but it doesn't look like they made it up to the possible potential of a 3DS game. Is what I'm saying. It looks like a DS point 0.5 or 1.5 or something instead of a 3DS, which is, I think you know what I mean. But it's interesting. It's a fun kind of series, and you can do a lot with it. You can focus on different things in the game and play it as you want to play it. So I think I definitely wouldn't recommend it to people who aren't really into hardcore simulation games or people who can't read Japanese, because like I said, the tutorial's 10 hours, and it's 10 hours of like constant explanation of things, which is a lot of reading and a lot of, I mean, I think you wouldn't be able to play, even though all the menus are icons, you wouldn't be able to play, I don't think, not normally, without being able to read all the bizarre charts and graphs and things that come up when you play the game, which, makes it not exactly accessible to anybody but, I guess, Japanese readers, which is unfortunate because it actually is a pretty good series, and I'd like to see more games like this be made and be localized and become more popular, because there was a point where this kind of simulation game was more popular. The PS1 era is like the golden age of these kinds of simulations. There are so many good ones on the PS1, and it's kind of sad that recently there's not a huge amount of these kind of simulation games. A lot of them have been kind of dumbed down to the point of super simple and put on Facebook or something. It's like the kind of thing where like it's just like microtransaction city for instead of Sim City, I guess. Um, and it's too bad because there, if you look at the library of the PS1 really has some of the best kind of games, and up until recently they've been doing some other types of simulation games, but they've been moving more towards either handhelds or being super dumbed down to smartphone games. And some of them, there are some good smartphone games, but I should make a different video about that. So anyway, that's about it for Irashadeiko. It's pretty in-depth, pretty long, and fun, but very dense. So probably unplayable for everybody. But if anyone was interested in it, that's my thoughts. It was fun. I liked playing it for the time that I put into it, but you know, it's the kind of thing that I can't recommend to anybody but fans of trains, I guess, and fans of really dense simulation games. So, yeah, that's about it. I will see you guys next time.